what I want to do in this live session is to show us some important stuff that would change our life and help us to think for ourselves. It's This is the second installment in our series called Reading and the Life of the Mind. And what I will be doing in today's installment, today's teaching in today's lecture, I will be I'll be talking about reading as intellectual training. And the reason why it is that is because reading is a vital part of training ourselves training ourselves to think for ourselves. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to read properly. Should be able to read properly. The disciplined reader, as many people think they are born. The disciplined reader is not born. They are actually forged. They are made. The disciplined reader are made. Every great thinker that you know that has shaped the world as we know it, uh, they are all they all have a reading habit that shaped their mind before it shaped the world. So what we want to do in this lecture is to show you the framework that would help you to read, then help you to think. Now, this 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 second lecture is still foundational to the premise. I'm still trying to build a premise on this idea of reading and the life of the mind. So this is still introduction. So as I said, reading is how we build the cognitive infrastructure that process all knowledge. Let me repeat that again. Reading is how we build the cognitive it's how we build the cognitive infrastructure that possesses that processes all knowledge so if we want to become physically strong, I've said this again and again, if you want to become physically strong, we are expected to go to the gym and like lift weights progressively, weights that are progressively heavier than ourselves. That is how we build physical strength. We build physical strength by lifting weight. Now, that also applies to reading. And the beautiful thing is, we don't just go to the gym to build, we don't just go to the gym to build strength. We go to the gym to to do what? We go to the gym discipline. So apart from the fact that we lift weight, we we submit ourselves to discipline. So it applies to reading also. We don't just want to lift mental weight. We want to submit ourselves to discipline, right? Nobody's expected to become strong by accident. Nobody's expected to become muscular or become like physically strong by accident. It's always it's always we always expect them that okay, the reason why they are this strong or this muscular or this well built physically is because they lift weight or they submit themselves to a discipline that involves weight carrying, diet and all the rest. So that also applies to reading. But the thing is that you know, most people expect us to just become intelligent. Like there's this belief that this thing is. There's this belief. There's this belief that the reason this belief of intelligent people are born. There's this belief intelligent people are born, but that is not the case. Just as much as people are not just masculine by accident. Now there are exception of course. There are exception. There are some people who are well built, like naturally well built, but you still not compare them. You still like I always say the exception is not the rule. So because some people are naturally well built, I know somebody like that. I know somebody that is he's well built. He's not going to the gym, but he's if you look at him, you think he's going to the gym, but he's not. Now those people are based on genetics, but the exception is not the rule. So the same thing. Of course, there are few people who are intelligent, like they are intelligent naturally, but that's not the rule. So the point is, intelligence is built just like muscles is built. Intelligence is built just as muscles is built. So if we want to become mentally intelligent, if we want to become intelligent people, if we want to cultivate the life of our minds, then we have got to submit ourselves to discipline. We've got to submit ourselves to the discipline of the mind through the weight of books. Do you understand? Cultivating the mind through the weights of books. That's it. So it's a part you must be willing to. It's a part that you must be willing to take to a part that you must be willing. A part you must be willing. So how to do that? Sometimes it's through coaches or people who have done it before, or kind of like attending a class like this. Attending a class like this gives you that. It gives you that willingness, to not to give up, because sometimes the reason why we give up on some certain things in our own lives is because we don't have people that holds us accountable to those things. So when we give ourselves to when we give ourselves to discipline, the discipline of the mind, and we have someone, a coach, to hold us accountable, it's easy. It's easy to, it's easy to get this thing done. Now, when I say easy, I'm not talking about like it's actually easy, but you not struggle on your own. Somebody is there to guide you. And why is it important? It's because that the reason is it's important, like to have somebody to hold you accountable, is because like as I've already said, it makes it easier. Now, this lecture is about what intellectual training is about. This intellectual training through reading effectively, and what this effective reading looks like. So, we'll be looking at the mind as muscle. The mind as muscle. And the core idea behind what I want to say is that, cognitive effort is not a sign that something is going wrong. If you read a book and it's difficult, that doesn't mean that something is wrong. No, far from it. Many people think, oh, I'm reading and I'm finding it difficult to read. Sometimes they say something like, okay, I'm in a reading slump. Now that can happen. That is true. But like I said, the cognitive effort required to cultivate your mind is not a sign that something is wrong. No, it isn't. It is the mechanism by which your mind grows. And I'm going to be explaining. I said this is the core idea. The core idea behind this, the mind as muscle, is that cognitive effort is not a sign. Like if you if you're on my WhatsApp channel, I made a post by Robert Greene. Robert Greene said reading is like mental resistance. It's actually like mental resistance. So if you're exerting more mental energy in the book you're reading, it's not a sign that something is wrong. It's actually the mechanism to grow your mind. So research in cognitive science shows that learning which feels effortful, like somewhat difficult, produces stronger, more durable understanding than reading that feels easy. Now, this is called desirable difficulty. So, if you engage in a book and the book is difficult, no, you shouldn't drop it, because the mind is like muscle. The mind is like muscle. So, the more you exercise it with things, with ideas, with books that are beyond your current mental capacity, it actually builds your mind. It builds your mind. It builds your mind. Reading is like mental resistance. You're wrestling with an idea. I I explained that most in this book. I explained that. Deep reading, how to engage your mind in the book. I explained that, and I showed even more. So it you need to be reading is wrestling with ideas. Ideas that on your own you might not naturally think. And if you were in the last lecture or you watched the video, I made mention of, reading is like, it's you're actually priming your mind. You're actually priming your mind to lift weight, ideas. Now, difficult text builds mental strength. Difficult text builds mental strength. So if you're not, I always say something like this, that one of this my one of my secret of being so prolific in my writing life and being so creative as a designer. I'm a designer, I'm a creative. The secret is that I've been able to cultivate my mind. I've been able to cultivate my mind through deep reading or the hard mental work of reading books. I've been able to, so it's easy. It's easy for me to think through an idea or to come up with ideas that the ordinary person would not think. See, this is the secret of all the great thought leaders that you know, all the people that have shaped civilization or shaped the world as we know it. They are able to think. They have been able to cultivate their mind, so they understand the the nuances that it takes to generate ideas and to share it with the world. Remember what I said at the start of this video? Before all the great thinkers were able to change the world, the first and foremost changed their mind. They shaped their mind before they were able to shape the world. So if you want to shape your world, if you want to shape your world, if you want to change your life, it starts with the mind. The Bible says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So a text that demands more than you currently have, a text that demands more than you currently have, forces you to extend your mental capacity. That is why I love reading difficult books. I love reading difficult books because it will force you beyond your comfort zone. Reading that, when you pick up books or you pick up materials that are very familiar with you, from the structure of the article or book to the to the words used in that book, I can tell you that you become mentally lazy. You become mentally lazy. But if you're able to engage with books that is more and beyond your mental capacity, it will it will help you to think in a particular way that you have not been thinking. And to a large extent, you start producing excellent thoughts. You start thinking excellent thoughts. So it is dangerous to exclusively read within your comfort zone. It is. It is dangerous. You should not always be reading in your comfort zone. Go beyond your comfort zone. Read books that are maybe not even of this century. Read books like there's a book that I have. Hmm? There's a book that I have. The book is Augustine's Confession, or Confession simply by Augustine of Hippo. It's a Christian book. I must tell you that book is difficult to read. It's difficult to read is because one, the it was written I think in the fourth century. Can you imagine? The book is about one of 1,500 years old, and I'm in the 21st century reading a book from the fourth century. That book is difficult, and I must confess, sometimes when I read the book and I'm finding it difficult to understand, sometimes I put it down. Not Now, I put it down not so that I will not read it again, but I put it down so that I can be able to process some of the things that I've read and try to make sense of it in my own life. So when I go back to it, it's almost like I've gained a strength that I did not have at first. And that is what physical exercise is. You started doing 10 push-ups, and the next day, your after the 10 push-ups, your body start paining you. Now this case scenario is most common with people who have not been doing push-up for a very long time. Your body will start paining you, and the reason it's paining you is because like there have been wounds tearing in, like micro tearing in your muscles, and those things actually brings pain. But the beautiful thing is, inside that micro tearing in your muscles, over time it builds more stronger muscles in those places that like were teared because of the force. So when you go back to do that 10 push up becomes easier to do. Now you can do 15 or 20, or even you can go now 30. So it's that 10 push up that you've been doing has built a form of resistance inside of you, that easy to just it's easy to do more push-ups. It applies to reading. It applies to reading. So that is what happened. So whenever I read this difficult book, I also have another one. It's about the life of Colin Powell, Soldier. That's the title of the book. It's a big book, and very, very tiny. I also find that book difficult to read. And sometimes I pick it up, read, and if I'm not understanding, or once it's as if something is happening to me, I just put it down and go back to it again. So it happens. But don't allow yourself be in a comfort zone where you only read books that are easy to read for you, and you don't really engage in those books, because it keeps you in a it keeps you at a particular level in your mental life, in your intellectual life. So it is dangerous to exclusively read books in your comfort zone. And when I say comfort zone, I'm talking about reading books that you're reading books that are simply just about your that are like your mental level. You're reading books that are in your mental level. So If you stay in your comfort zone for a long time, uh, it will get you comfortable, but it will keep you intellectually static, and that is not what we want. We are cultivating our minds. We want to we want to create a life of the mind. We want to create a life of the mind where the moment we engage ourselves in the books we read or in ideas or in life in general, we are able to engage. Because as we, the age we are in right now, it's called the AI age. AI is thinking. So I always say, I said that, I think I said that in the I said that in the last lecture. I said that in the last lecture, and I keep saying that on my WhatsApp channel. I say now it is not enough that you read. No, it's not enough that you read. What is most important right now is that how you think those thoughts. It is not enough that you think, because AI is thinking. AI think, and to a large extent, AI think better than most of us. So it's not just about thinking now. It's about how you think those thoughts. How you think those thoughts. So we are talking about mental models here. How you think those thoughts, right? Now, uh, there's something called progressive overload, and it applies to reading. Overload. It's something that has to do with physical exercise. Overload. If you're a gym enthusiast, you understand. Progressive overload, it applies to reading. Now, what does it mean and how does it applies to reading? Now, progressive overload is the act of deliberately, like, increasing the difficulty of what you read. In the gym, I keep saying, I keep talking about gym, and some people will think that now I'm a gym person. No, I'm not really a gym person. I do exercise, but I'm not really a gym person. Just for the sake of this lecture, I did some study and some stuff. Uh, Now, when somebody goes to the gym and the person is uh, the person is lifting weight. Now, the person don't just lift a lot of weight at a time. First and foremost, they keep the first weight. When when you hold your what is even called your dumbbells, I think so, something like that. Now, before you know, the more you pick up you lift the weight, and it becomes easy. They start adding stacks of dumbbells or something like that. That is what progressive overload is about, and that is it applies to reading. So once something is easy, once you're reading and it's somewhat easy, you can increase it. You can increase the difficulty, right? You can increase the difficulty, and this leads to what is called the paradox of rereading. The paradox of rereading. It's now what does that mean? Right? If you know the meaning of the word paradox. Now, a book that was difficult the first time often feels easier the second time. I know you've experienced that. I've been saying, I've been talking about. Okay, let me just use another book that I've read. I read recently that was really difficult, and I made mention of it. I made mention of it, and I also talked about it in my book. Uh, I It's a book by J.I. Packer. In fact, all of the books that I've read by J.I. Packer, is a Christian theologian. He's a theologian, a Christian author and preacher. All the books that I have of this man, his books are somewhat difficult. He's from the he's from the past century. The title of the book is Knowing God, and I've read the book. Now, if I pick up that book again and I read that book again, it will not be as difficult as it was the first time I read it. And that has been the case for all my books that I've read from start to finish. All those books, when I pick them and read them again, it's so easy to read. Sometimes I even get tired, like, this was the book that I read maybe 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Now, it was not the book that changed. It was not the book. It was you're the one who changed. You are the one who changed. You've built a stronger mental capacity. There's a book that I have in my library that I cannot just read that book. When I bought the book, I'll not call the title of the book so that it will not. When I first bought that book, at least I've built a level of mental capacity, like to a large extent. When I picked that book, it was I find it difficult to read the book. Not because it was mentally the book had a lot of it has a lot of weight and all the rest. No. It's just too easy to read. I left the book. I left the book. I left it. What changed was not the it was not even the book. The book is not the problem. It was just that my mental capacity has gone beyond the structure of the book, the way the book was structured, the way the book was written. It was just I did not just enjoy the book. It was just too easy to read. I left the book. I have several books like that in my library. I have several books like that. I cannot just read them because it's just too easy to read. That is why it's important to build yourself. That is why an author that I love reading a lot is A.W. Tozer. I love reading A.W. Tozer because there's a way he presents his ideas. I have a lot of his books in my library. I have a lot of his books in my library. There's a way he presents idea and it's just so excellent. It's just so excellent. I love him. Another person I love so much is John Maxwell. I love how John Maxwell presents his ideas. It's intellectual and it's even if John Maxwell writes in a seeming the same pattern of writing, but it's intelligent. The way he presents his ideas are intelligent. So this is the secret of the world's most famous authors, creative inventors, and all the rest. They have a mind, a certain kind of mind that is above average. And the way they were able to cultivate this above average mind, I'm not talking about mindset, above average mind, is the ideas that they interacted with on a daily basis. And most of them did this through books. Now, the world greatest inventor, I say inventor, the world greatest investor, Warren Buffett, he says that he reads 8 hours every day. 8 good hours. That is why he makes good investment decisions. That is why he makes good investment decisions. So, so we should we should we should we should learn to think and we should learn to engage ourselves in the books we read. The world's most formidable thinkers did not stumble into intellectual greatness. They built it. They cultivated it. They built it. They cultivated it. We should be able to cultivate a reading mind. They did it book by book through deliberate practice. Through deliberate practice. Someone like Abraham Lincoln, very popular. Abraham Lincoln was largely self-educated, and it is said that he read the King James Version Bible, the King James Bible, and Shakespeare so deeply that their rhymes entered his prose permanently. Like if you have read any of, or maybe listened to his speech, heard him or read any of his writing, you'd notice that you notice something. You notice that you know there's this the way this man writes and the way this man thinks. It's it's just King James, or it's just Shakespeare. And there's something that there is a practice he did. He always read aloud. He always read aloud. He reads, he reads, and so let us learn from this man. One of his practice is that he reads aloud. For example, maybe he picks up this book and he says, many readers today consumes a significant portion of their reading on screens, e-readers, tablets, computers, or phones. Such is the case for many people who belong to my online book club. So I hear you asking, does active reading work differently in digital formats? Now this is from my book. Still say it again. This is from my book. So that's just it. He picks up the book because sometimes that is how you even make sense of ideas. If I am struggling with what an author says, because maybe the way he presents the idea in the book, I can just read aloud. And when I hear myself or I hear my voice reading it back to me rather than reading silently, it does something to my mind, it does something to my brain. And this is scientifically proven that when you're reading out loud, it does something to your brain, right? It does something to your brain. There's somebody called Simeon Weil. There- there's something peculiar with her that I like so much. She practiced what she calls attention as a near spiritual discipline. Attention. Anytime you pick up a book, there's something that happens. Like you pick up a book and you remove every form of distraction. You pick up a book and you remove every form of distraction. It does something to you. It does something to you. It does something to you. I can tell you that. Like it trains you to be attentive. That is why if you want to make sense of your life in this digital age, like reading is something you're supposed to be doing. Reading is something you're supposed to be doing. And the reason is because now social media is built to hijack your attention. We find it difficult to concentrate. Just imagine that you pick up your phone and you scroll, you saw a video, somebody's teaching you about how to have a successful relationship, a particular area in having a successful relationship. As you just watch that video, as you're done watching that video, the next scroll you saw a cat dancing. You saw a cat dancing. The next scroll you saw a meme. You s- like it's kind of like it's doing something to your brain. Your brain is not normal. It's not normal. Your brain is not normal at that point. So imagine that you're moving from one thing to the next, like you're not giving your brain that breathing space to process information. Uh, that is why some people find it difficult to just be bored, to just sit and do nothing. It's just impossible. And if you're honest with yourself, that's the case with you. If you're honest with yourself, that is the case with you. So she practiced something she called attention as a near Attention as a near spiritual discipline. Now, to read with full attention was for her um, a moral and intellectual act of the highest order. There's something I wrote in my book. Let me read it. Something I wrote in my book that I think you'd like. I said something like, okay, I said something about reading as I said something about reading is one of those activities that makes us human. Reading is one of those activities, if not the activity that like humanize us, because it helps us to sit down and process ideas that shapes us and makes us better human beings. So she saw sitting down, giving her full attention as a moral and intellectual act of the highest order. And I see it like that too. When the reading is divine, that is why sometimes I say God wrote a book. And the reason he wrote a book about himself means that reading is one of those divine activities we engage our minds in. That is why if you truly read and engage your mind in a book, it changes you, not just probably how you behave, but it changes how you think. And when a man's mind is transformed and changed, when a man's mind is transformed and changed, it will it will change his life. It will change his life. It will change his life. So let me show you three common habits that is found like in the lives of vigorous readers, including myself. Something I practice. I do it all the time. Is number one is three habits common across all vigorous readers. Is number one, they read with a pen. They read with a pen. You know, annotation is what annotation is how you make sense of the things you read. Annotation is how you make sense of the things you read. I want to show you one of the books I'm currently reading. Here's one of the book I'm currently reading, and if you look, see some annotation. Now, if you can see my pen highlights, you can see my pen and the things that I've highlighted. Like I don't know if it's clear and you're seeing it. See, red pen. There are some places that I even wrote on the margin. Okay, this one even have a sticky note on it, writing something. Or look at this point. So every vigorous reader reads with a pen. You cannot say you're reading and you're not reading with a pen. Like you're not annotating, you're not, writing down ideas. Remember something I said in the last video? Reading is thinking through the author's thoughts. So if you pick up a book and you're writing exactly what you read in the book, now I'm not saying that is bad practice, it's good practice. But if you truly want to allow the book to come into you and you go through the book, you've got to write down the ideas that comes to your mind as you're reading the book. The ideas that comes to your mind as you're reading the book. Now reading with a pen, reading with highlighters, reading with with uh bookmarks like this, highlighters, reading with things like this. It engage you with the book. I said this a lot in the last lecture, so you can pick it up and watch it. So It is a vital part of the process. Every vigorous reader reads with a pen. They write on the margin of the book. They write. If you saw that video, if you're in my WhatsApp channel, I posted a video today of Robert Greene. Made mention of that. He was talking about sometimes you're disagreeing with the author. Oh, this writing is rubbish. I'm angry, and I do that too. There's a book in my library that I was reading, and the author said something, and I wrote in the margin, I don't agree with this. I even there's there's one recently that I made a post on my WhatsApp channel, and I read a book about almost 10 years ago. I read it almost 10 years ago, and there's something the author wrote, and I was like, I don't agree with this, and I was like, okay, this is the reason I don't agree with this. I wrote it in the margin, and I recently bumped into that because I was making research. I was making research based on that book. Like it's talking about something I was making research. So I just picked the book up and I saw the things I wrote in the margin, and I was like, I still disagree. I still disagree with what this author wrote. So annotate, write on the margin. You know, books are not precious things. If you pick up most of the books in my library and you go through them, you see my life. That is why I don't borrow books. That's the reason why I don't borrow books. Because my life is actually there. You see me wrestling with ideas, disagreeing, and things like that. So every vigorous reader, every reader that engage themselves in the books they read, they engage their mind in the books they read, they always read with a pen. If you're reading without a pen, you're not reading. Or maybe you're just reading a storybook. But you're reading non-fiction, you're reading non-fiction to transform your life, then you read with a pen. Number two, they read outside their field. They read outside their field. They read cross domain reading is what produces original sentences. I made mention of sentences in the last video. Uh, they read outside their field. Now, the book about Colin Powell that I read, it's a book about military life, military leadership. I don't know anything about military leadership. I don't know anything that has to do with the military. I'm not in it, but I learned a lot of things from that book. I learned a lot from that book. There's also a book that I've been reading of recent. Been reading of recent. It's a book about um, human nature, and reading that book has now this book has exposed me to ideas of human nature from different culture, different religion, and all the rest. Before, I only know about human nature from a Christian standpoint because I'm a believer and I'm a believer. I believe in Jesus Christ. So all my idea of human nature from has always been from a Christian biblical perspective. But reading this book, it opened my mind to see this same idea from the from the Islamic standpoint, from the Hindu standpoint, from the Confucian standpoint, and it's I must say it solidified my idea of human nature from a Christian standpoint. Yeah, when you cross domain, like you cross domain, you're reading, it produces original sentences. Your thinking becomes more original, so to speak. Number three, they keep a record. They keep a record. No, they record their ideas, they're reading in notebooks, in journals, commonplace books as the external memory of an active mind. Now, there's a practice I was doing when I was way younger in my reading life. I was actually writing down the names and the author of books I read. I think in 2017 or 2016, I actually read about 120 books and I wrote them down. And when I go through that, I'm like, wow, that was the time I actually read. Now I don't really right now I don't curate, I don't create my, I don't write down, I don't record the books that I read. But right now, I record ideas that I get in the books that I read. If I were just reading and write down the name of the book, of course these books were shaping me. But right now, I don't actually practice the writing down of books I read. Rather, I write down the ideas I get in the books I read. So that's it. Always keep a record. That's one of the. These are the three top things Vogorious reader does. These are the three. So now I want to answer a question that a question many people struggle with. Should we read slowly or should we read faster? Because literally almost everybody I know is always on a beat to read faster. I always want to read faster. People are always asking, how can I read faster? How can I and all the rest? But that's not the case. Fast reading is appropriate for introspectional reading. Like maybe you're surveying or you're scanning or you're deciding whether I should commit myself to reading this book as a whole. That is when fast reading is required. But slow reading is required for genuine understanding. Like you're lingering in the book, you're pausing to ask yourself question, to know if you truly understand what you're reading, to make sense of the things you're reading, or you're even rereading, rereading a sentence to, resist your maybe lack of focus. So slow reading has its place, fast reading has its place. So the skill, the skill reader, the skill reader knows which mode to employ. Like me, I know when, like if I go into a bookshop and I want to pick up a new book to read, and especially when I don't even know the author, the first thing I do, I go through as I pick up the book. The first thing I look at is I look at the subtitle of the book. Like in this instance now, how to engage your mind in a book. That sounds interesting. The title of the book is Deep Reading, but the subtitle, and the truth is, when you go out to look for a book, especially when the book has a subtitle, always look at the subtitle. The subtitle is what the book is really, really about. Now, the title of this book is Deep Reading, but what this book is really about is how to engage your mind in a book. That's just it. Okay, here's another example. Now, this is called E-Myth Mastery. The subtitle is The Seven Essential Disciplines for Building a World-Class Company. In fact, that is what actually made me to buy this book. I want to build a world-class company. And it says that the 7 essential discipline for building a world-class company. So, do you get? So that's the first thing I do. Then I go to the back of it and I read if they actually praise for it. I go through the praises and okay, I like this one now. I see some people that are trusted and all the rest. But if it's somebody that I don't know at all, I can just scan through the book, go to the table of content. I go to the table of content and I read through it to see this thing. Then probably I might just scan through the introduction, try to see the core premise behind the book, the core argument behind the book. Then I can also go to the conclusion and just, scan through. So that's just it. That's so sometimes you employ fast reading, sometimes you engage in slow reading, right? That's just it. So let us quickly wrap up this. Let us quickly wrap up this lecture. So what I want to do at the end of this lecture is show you how to read for structure, not for just content. And the core idea here is that now most readers harvest the content of a book. Most readers harvest the content of a book, but the trained reader maps its architecture. So when you pick up the book, you want to know the structure behind this book. You want to know the structure behind this book. You want to understand the architecture. And the architecture is often where real intellectual value lives. If you want to get the most out of the book, is understanding the structure behind the book. Because the difference between what a book says and how a book argues is in the content. And this content is it's not surface. The argument of the structure, the argument, I mean, is the structure beneath it. So it's not just about the content. It's not about what the book is just saying. It's how the book is arguing. Right? How the book is arguing. Because every non-fiction book is essentially making a case. Every non-fiction book. Every non-fiction book. So it's your job to identify it. It's your job to know it. Because when you know it, when you understand the premise, the core premise behind the book, what the book is arguing for, what they are trying to prove, what they are trying to get you to agree, right? What they are trying to, what the author is trying to, get you to believe, to orient to act on, or something like that. When you understand it, when you understand the structure, it changes how you interact with the book, and it changes your life. It changes how you read. So the first thing you want to look for is the central claim. The first thing you want to look for is the central claim. So you ask questions like, what is the author asserting to be true? What is the author asserting to be true? So there is the general truth. Now, let me say the premise behind this lecture series is, I want to take you to a point where you think like a philosopher. You think for yourself. That is the premise. So this lesson, the last lesson and this lesson, I've been able to show you something about reading, how to read. So that is because I believe something. What do I believe? The belief behind this lecture series is that reading is essential for the life of the mind. That is what I believe. So that is what I'm showing you. That is why I'm starting to talk about reading first, even before really talking about the mind itself. Because I've not even started talking about the life of the mind. I've just been talking about reading as it relates to the life of the mind. So, what is the central claim? What is the central claim? What is the author asserting to be true? That's the first thing you should look for. Now, the second thing you should look for is the evidence. The second thing you should look for is the evidence. What do they offer in support? This is the claim. This is what they are offering as support. In this case now, I've shown you from the life of some of the best thinkers like Abraham Lincoln or like Simon Weil. I've shown you, okay, these people are not just, and maybe as I'm talking, you've started remembering some of the best thinkers you know. So the central claim, the evidence. The third thing to look for is the reasoning. How do they connect the evidence to the claim? How do they connect it? That is what you're looking for. How do they connect it? This is what they claim to be true. This is what they are asserting to be true. This is the evidence they give in support of that truth. Now, this is the reason. This is how they connect it. Then lastly, the assumptions. What must be true for their argument to hold? This is what makes you a deep thinker, so to speak. This is what makes you a deep thinker. Number 1, the central claim. Number 2, the evidence. Number 3, the reasoning. And number 4, the assumption. So quickly, a critical distinction most reader never make when they read is example versus evidence. Example versus evidence. Now, what's the difference? What's the difference between an example and an evidence? An example illustrates a point. An example illustrates a point. It does not prove it. That's the difference. An evidence proves, an example illustrates, right? An evidence establishes that something is the case. Examples merely make it imaginable. When you pick up a book that is full of compelling stories, it may be making a case on examples alone. It is our job as vigorous readers to notice that. It is our job to notice that. So the assignment I'm giving to you is, when you pick up a book, don't just read like the average person would read. Ask these questions. Ask yourself questions. The evidence, the claim, the reasoning, the assumptions. Pay attention to these things because it gives you a template to think for yourself. It gives you a template to think for yourself. So the question I want to ask you is, what is the hardest book you read in recent time? You read this book and it was really hard. It was really hard for you. Tell me. That's the question. That's a question I want you to ask yourself. That's a question I want you to ask yourself. That's a question I want you to ask yourself. So as we come to the end of this lecture, I want you to ask yourself, what is the hardest book you have ever finished? Not just started, not just that you start the book, but the book was difficult, but you read it to completion. And when you finished it, what did it do to the way you think? What moved inside your mind that has not moved back? If you cannot think of a book like that, I'm not trying to criticize you. I'm not trying to make you feel that, okay, maybe I'm not really engaging in books that are intellectually charged, so to speak. I'm only directing you. I'm only showing you that you should stop reading books in your comfort zone. If you want to cultivate a deep mind, if you want to cultivate your mind, then you must give yourself to deep reading. I really encourage you to pick up this book. It's available. It's available. It's available on Amazon, or you can get it on Seller. Get this book. Get my book. Get this book. It will really help you in your reading life, and it will help you to cultivate your mind. Read this book. So that's it. That's it for today. Thank you for joining this live session. I really appreciate